I'll admit that I'm a hater, but probably not in the way that you think. I hate the way that we talk about college football schedules because the idea, to me, this is just my opinion. This is the way I look at it. To me, the way that we talk about schedules is dumb. The idea that how good somebody else is determines how good you are feels wrong and backwards to me. The idea that because of the teams that are on Georgia's schedule are good means Georgia's good doesn't hold just a ton of weight to me. Louisville has a couple of losses by a combined like 11 points to very good teams. Does that mean Louisville is slash could be slash should be a ranked a top 15 team in America? No, it doesn't. The only time that we apply those metrics, those qualifiers, those quantifiers are to teams that we're trying to decipher on who's 1 through 11 now. And so I don't necessarily care about schedule. So I don't care that Georgia has played the toughest schedule in America, and therefore it's unfair that they have 2 losses and that they are ranked 12th and currently outside the college football playoff. Because here's the deal. And I think this is almost a message specifically for SEC fans. For so long, you have been viewed as the top dog in the sport, and justifiably so. You cannot argue with the results. But the first time that it doesn't go your way, the idea that like Paul Feinbaum is screaming to the heavens on Get Up that it's not fair. Does anybody really believe that Indiana would beat Ole Miss? Well, Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, who can't complete a forward pass. Does anybody believe that Penn State would beat Georgia? Georgia lost to Alabama, who lost to Vanderbilt. You can't tell me for 3 decades that Vanderbilt is this gigantic punching bag, and then when they beat one of the top teams in America, be like, well, you know what? Commodore is actually pretty good. No, you don't get to do that. And is Vanderbilt just okay? Yeah, they are. But you know what? Kentucky beat Ole Miss, and Kentucky sucks. And I think Kentucky fans would tell you that they suck. And they probably could have, and you could argue should have, beat Georgia. And you know what? I think Indiana would beat the piss out of Kentucky. So the idea that because Ole Miss didn't, and because Georgia almost didn't, now I recognize that this is one day after saying, like, I don't necessarily care about how tight losses, like a win is a win is a win is a win. But you know what? Ole Miss lost to LSU, and LSU lost to USC. And you know what? USC ain't very good. And you know who I think would beat the piss out of USC? Indiana and Penn State and Ohio State and Oregon. And so this idea that we continue to go back and forth of how good somebody else's schedule is determines how good, or how good the teams we've played are determines how good we are. No, you're either good or you're not. You can either see it on the field or you can't. And we continue to use this metric of, well, Georgia's got the toughest schedule in America. And that very well may be. And I'm sorry that happened to you, Georgia fans. But at some point, you have to handle your business. And when your business includes beating Ole Miss, and not even like Ole Miss whipped them. And I know that we are still under the impression that Georgia is this 10,000-pound gorilla on the block, that if they just got it all figured out, they'd be the top dog. Well, you know what? They haven't. And they didn't. They beat the hell out of Clemson to start the year, and then they barely beat Kentucky. got whipped and then had a valiant comeback against Alabama, and now have got whipped by Ole Miss after whipping Texas. And consistency should matter. So if Indiana goes out there, and I'm on the record that Indiana's schedule has not been good. It has been, in fact, terrible. But the longer the season goes on, the longer there's a goose egg in that column, in that loss column. You're going to get everybody's best shot. And all Indiana has done is handle their business. And it's the same for Penn State. They lost a game against Ohio State, who I don't think there are many people who would argue that Ohio State is a top 5 team in the country. That's their one sin. And Ohio State's one sin is you lost to what is the consensus best team in America. So for SEC fans to be acting as if they haven't gotten the benefit of the doubt for the last 2 decades, to me feels ridiculous. You have to learn the lesson that everybody else in college football knows, and that it doesn't always bounce your way. It doesn't always break your way. You don't always get what you think is best, what you think you deserve. And so for every other football program in America outside of the SEC, it has been win the games on your schedule and you have nothing to worry and bitch about. But for SEC teams, for SEC fans, programs, coaches, anytime there's a loss, it's, well, you know, we had to go to Alabama. Okay. And ACC schools have to go to Clemson, or they had to go to Florida State, or Big Ten schools have had to go to Ohio State, to Michigan, to Wisconsin, to Iowa, now to USC, to Oregon, to Penn State, and go win those games. You can't champion the idea of like, well, if you win all your games, you don't have anything to worry about. And then when you start losing your games, go, well, this isn't fair. This isn't right. Damn it, we're better than the teams who have better records than us. And I don't know that I 100% die on the hill of like, you are what your record says you are in college football, because the playing field is so uneven that the idea of, would Indiana beat Georgia? Probably not. I don't know that I would die on the hill that Indiana deserves to be in the college football playoff race right now. But if you're going to pound the table that the games on the field matter, have to matter, should matter, you can't look at one Power 4 school that's 10-0 and another that's 8-2 and go, well, it's not fair that 8-2 is ranked behind 10-0. Should that be how it is? Yes, but this ain't Rainbow Land. This ain't the land of sunshine, daisies, unicorns. This is the real world. And so 10-0 is going to be ranked above 8-2 100 times out of 100. And so quit. I guess the ultimate message is quit your bitching. If Georgia had won all of its games, you know where Georgia would be ranked? It sure as hell ain't 12. It sure as hell wouldn't be 5, 6, 7, or 8. It wouldn't be. If Georgia was 10-0, I guess 9-0 after last week's rankings, you know where 9-0 Georgia would have been? They wouldn't have been 7th or 8th like BYU and Indiana. They'd have been number 1. But because they didn't handle their business, they don't get the benefit of the doubt that someday down the line you're going to handle your business, because you've got a track record that you don't. And it's the same case for Ole Miss. Does anybody believe Ole Miss will beat Indiana? I think Indiana might beat Ole Miss, because you know what? Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, who can't complete a goddamn pass. So this idea that just because we've got the SEC letters on our chest, we can walk into anywhere we want and beat anybody, those days are over. NIL transfer portal has evened the playing field, so much so that damn near anybody can beat anybody else on any given day. You know how I know? Because Kentucky sucks. And they lost a 1-point game to Georgia, and they beat Ole Miss. 2 teams who are likely to make the college football playoff. And you know what? If you are going to tell me that Notre Dame's loss to Northern Illinois should be a flat-out disqualifier for them to be ranked in the top 10, 11, or 12, then a loss to Kentucky isn't as bad, but it's damn near close because Kentucky sucks. And I don't have any qualms saying that. And the biggest takeaway is Kentucky fans getting pissed. I don't care. Your team is not great. And if Northern Illinois was to play Kentucky, it might be a pretty good ball game. But if you're going to tell me that a loss for Notre Dame to a 5-4 group of 5 school, who their losses are by 3, 7, 7, and 2, is this gigantic disqualifier and point exhibit A for why an expanded college football playoff sucks, then you need to look me in the eye and explain to me how losing to Kentucky at home isn't pretty well the same thing. So you've gotten the benefit of the doubt for a very long time, and you're no longer getting it. You didn't win the national championship last year. You didn't get a team into the national championship last year. This year, because you have so much parity in your conference, which I think is an undeniable good thing, you are no longer going to be viewed as the top dog. You're going to get the opportunity to prove that you're still the best conference because the SEC is going to get several teams into the college football playoff. And if you dominate the way you had for the previous 20 years, you can then probably point and say, did Georgia deserve to be ranked number 11? No. But if the games on the field matter, the losses have to matter too. And it can't be both ways of you win your games, you got nothing to worry about. And then when you start losing games going, well, wait a second, it's because our schedule has been really good. Yeah. To win a national championship, your schedule needs to be really good, especially the last 5 weeks of the season when you're playing on the road potentially somewhere or playing a conference champion or playing in the semifinals. You're going to have to beat good teams. And if you can't consistently do it, which is what Georgia has shown, Georgia hasn't shown that they can consistently beat great teams in 2024 or good teams in 2024. I don't think you get to bitch and moan and complain that you don't get to get into the big dance that everybody wants to get into. But that's just my thoughts on it. I hate the idea that how good the other team you beat is determines how good you are. I think that's a stupid idea to try to figure out who's good and who's not. And it's especially stupid when you're trying to justify it for why you've lost, why you haven't done the things that you're supposed to do week in, week out. You don't get the benefit of saying simply, oh, we played the toughest schedule in America. And then also, well, we went 10-2. I think we should still get in, even though we have a couple of not great losses on our resume. And our wins, we beat Texas. Okay. And then what else did you do? Well, Clemson's not that good, but we beat them. And all of this goes away. All of it goes away for Georgia if they beat Tennessee on Saturday. And you know what? If they don't, I wouldn't be surprised if the bitching continued. But if they do beat Tennessee, then fans are going to be saying, well, hey, our schedule's so difficult. No. You either win the game or you don't. And whoever's got the best resume after those 12 games, or in some cases 13, that should be who's in and who isn't. Because we're never going to get to a place where the schedule is balanced enough or there's enough, common opponents or whatever that you can look at and say, hey, here's what we got common data sets to look at. So sorry, it's just going to be one of those things that, like, if you're going to be in the SEC or the Big Ten, you're going to play better teams than teams in the ACC and the Big 12 are. And that's something you're just going to have to live with. And so the bitching and the moaning and the complaining of like, well, we think we could beat Indiana. Schedule them. Go to their place the first week of the college football playoff. And if you win, congratulations. You deserved it. You might be the better team. But if you've got some bad skeletons in your closet, looking at you, Ole Miss, looking at you, Tennessee, a loss to Arkansas. You think Arkansas is any good? They're not. If you got those kind of skeletons in your closet, I don't think you get to throw those stones at that glass house. I want to hear from you. What's your comments? What's your thoughts? Maybe I don't want to read them, but I do. Drop them in the comment box down below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.